I broke Twitter again. Every time that I trend on Twitter, I miss it. Remember the last time I trended on Twitter because if you don't remember this, I trended on Twitter because I called somebody Butterface. And I had walked away and had gone to run some errands or whatever and come back and, oh my God, and I'm trending and all this other stuff. And it was just the most insane thing in the world. And that was the lovely and talented Jordan Grace, who ending up as an apology to her, I donated $250 to adoptaclassroom.org, I believe, as a result of that. Because I didn't realize that the wrestlers were this, sensitive these days. Anyway, this past week, it was Tuesday, a day like any other day. I left a small town for the apple in decay. Actually, I left my office for the kitchen. Tuesday evening, I'm about 6:05. I was trying to be a good boy, so I retweeted the NWA tweet that Power was about to come on the air, and there was a great match between Trevor Murdoch and Nick Aldis. That was in the picture, the feature of the tweet.
Yeah, it's not the twit.
Yes, there was no twits involved. But anyway, so I retweet that so everybody will know to watch. And then I go downstairs because I've got a bunch of Cornette's collectibles to do. And about 7:30 or so, the phone rang. And I saw it was David Lagana because I still had my phone downstairs. I'd been making phone calls, didn't put it back in the office. So I answer it, and it's a dial tone. And I'm like, maybe he ass dialed me. So I call him right back and immediately get his voicemail, like his phone's turned off. I'm like, well, I don't know what the fuck, but hey, David, tried to get back with you. I'm going to have dinner. Good evening. I do say good day, whatever the fuck, right? And I put the phone back in the office, and I go back downstairs, and I eat, and I finish Cornette's collectibles, and I have a nice night's sleep, and I get up on Wednesday morning, and I sit down at the computer, and I have broken the goddamn world. And apparently I trended on Twitter. The notifications on my Twitter page it was just ludicrous. I couldn't even begin to go through all that shit. And everybody is screaming, either, Corny, you horrible human being, I hope they put you on a fucking, stake and set you on fire in the town square, you motherfucker. I'm like, what in the fuck? And then other people go, well, I don't know what you're fucking so mad about. Everybody's making a big deal. He made a joke. I'm like, what the fucking joke? And I go, and then I see, I see that the NWA took the program down off YouTube after it aired and edited it to take 5 seconds of audio out and put it back up and issued a statement basically saying we strongly apologize for the offensive remarks made by one of our talents. And Brian, you know what it was, but I'm doing this buildup because some people that live under a rock and have not been bombarded by this may not actually know what this fucking uproar was about. It was because during the match between Trevor Murdoch and Nick Aldis, I used the joke that I first coined for Big Bubba Rogers. Murdoch is so tough he could strap a bucket of fried chicken on his back and ride a motor scooter across Ethiopia. That's what happened. This is why I broke Twitter again. I told a 30-year-old Ethiopian joke about starvation. So anyway, I'm like, what in the fuck is going on in the world? So right as I'm trying to digest all this, the phone rings. It's 8:30 in the morning, and it's David Lagana. I said, what in the fuck is going on? And he tells me that obviously the All Elite Wrestling cosplay, wrestling fanboy, fangirl contingent immediately after the show was over started tweeting about this and creating an uproar like I had been describing my favorite bestiality videos on a fucking live broadcast. This was the level of fucking hatred. And the other people are going, what the fuck are you talking about? It's a joke. We get it. He's told it before for 30 fucking years. It's about hungry people. And Big Bubba, or in this case, Trevor Murdoch. So, at any rate, David is talking about, well, an apology and a statement and this and that. And to back up a couple of weeks, it was just 2 or 3 weeks ago, and people can find the program on the YouTube channel if they want to listen to it, where we discussed the controversy where David had called me one morning and said, Jim, did you tell somebody to kill themselves? I said, no. Did you make fun of suicide? I said, no. He said, then why is everybody saying you did? I said, because they're saying it on Twitter. And it was the same instance. Well, we got to put out a statement. I said, how can I apologize for something I didn't say? That these fucking people are mad because I don't like their favorite wrestler have said I said. And they're butthurt and they take it the wrong way. And they just try to get offended. I said, so I can't apologize because I didn't say that. However, you can certainly reprimand me for it, which you are, and tell me how serious you're taking it, which you are. And then that's the statement they put out. And then we did the program, Brian, you and I, where I basically said I will continue not to do those things that I didn't do. That was what, about 3 weeks ago?
That sounds about right. I don't remember.
Somewhere around it.
Yeah.
So anyway, in this case, I said, David, this was a taped show. I said, what did you think about it when you heard it? He said, well, it went right past me. I said, you think? I said, why was there this level of, well, they were so upset on Twitter. That's another thing I talked about with him before. If you give these people the idea that every time they complain about something, you'll just jump around apologizing, whether it was said or whether it was meant in a bad way or whatever the fuck, then they will do it all the time. And he's already proven that he will do that. That was brought up. And also, I mentioned I don't appreciate, as I said, one of our talents making an offensive statement or offensive comments like I was fucking... the level of disgust is like I was boiling babies to sacrifice in service of Satan on live television. And I said, I don't appreciate being grouped in all these apologies for shit that I'm not necessarily sorry for, which we'll get to in a second. Because there's levels of fucking importance that these things should be assigned. And I'll tell you exactly where I want to tell you where the joke came from. And truthfully and honestly, as I mentioned to you yesterday, I can't remember whether I stole it or not. Somebody said it might be Richard Pryor, but we couldn't find evidence of that. I always remembered that I made it up because in the 80s, as you might not recall because you're not very old, everybody was telling Ethiopian jokes because it was huge news on a mainstream basis. That was, what was it? It wasn't We Are the World. It was We Are...
Live Aid.
Live Aid was for the Ethiopian famine. Every comic on television was making Ethiopian jokes. Every kid in school was making Ethiopian jokes. And I remember the first time that I said it because I was in the car with Big Bubba Rogers. And because when Bubba rode with us, we would always drop our cars off at the Holiday Inn on Woodlawn in Charlotte, right? And take whoever's car was driving. And right next to it was a Bojangles Chicken where we would often get chicken. So I may very well have just finished eating some chicken. But I hit him with, because I'm always looking for ways to fucking get Bubba over on goddamn television in the promos. Big Bubba Rogers is so bad, he could strap a bucket of fried chicken on his back and ride a motor scooter across Ethiopia. Number one, the motor scooter is there for the preposterous visual, because he's not necessarily going to be in an armored car, elsewise he wouldn't be in much danger. He's completely, several people on Twitter actually deconstructed this joke, as in the comic principles. You've got a large man who's so tough that he's unafraid to take food to a famine-ravaged location. You've got a preposterous visual means of transportation. And somebody said, well, if he hadn't have said chicken, it'd have been fine. Well, a bucket of chicken sounds funnier. It's funnier visual than a fucking plate of sushi or a goddamn ham sandwich. So it just happened to be that because that was funny. And then because Ethiopia was noted for a place where everybody's fucking starving, it's a starvation joke, not a race joke. Starvation. Starvation's a hilarious topic. But everybody was doing them. So the point is, whether it's a good joke or a bad joke, and I'm going to let you express your opinions here in a few minutes, Brian, because I know you have some, and you'll share them with us. But whether it's a good joke or a bad joke, it was a joke that has been told on TBS, USA Network, broadcast television stations across America, over a variety of locations for the past 30 years. Somebody, as a matter of fact, even found a 1995 fucking Superstars taping where I was doing color on a Bob Backlund match and fucking used it in the process of doing something I don't know what. But it boggles the mind that somebody could find that on command. Like, oh, Cornette told a joke, all the hundreds and thousands of hours of WWF programming I've been on. But anyway, the point is, a joke that's been told over a period of decades on multiple broadcast platforms suddenly isn't good for YouTube. I said, not only, besides the fact that when I said it, Joe Galley was sitting next to me. He didn't clutch his heart and fall over or shit his pants. Nobody in the control room thought to pull the plug like they did when I mentioned Ronnie and the Challenger. Nobody remarked on the comment afterwards. And in the 6 weeks that the show's been sitting in the can and then gone through the editing process and gotten ready for broadcast, nobody thought to bring it up. So when I asked Dave, I said, what'd you think when you heard it? Well, it went right past me. You think? Because nobody thought anything about it that had heard it, because it's a fucking old joke. Now, the degrees of these things, if anywhere during that process, if when I'd said it, the producer, one of whom is Dave Lagana, but there's a variety of people that can talk to us on our headsets, had said, oh, Jim, don't say that. Okay, sorry. If after the show, well, we're going to have to take that one joke out. Okay, fine. Sorry to make you have extra work, right? If anybody called me up and said, Jim, you told that joke. Yeah, I've told it a bunch of times. Well, it's racist. Okay, I didn't know that because I was thinking it was fucking funny because the people in Ethiopia were hungry. I was a big fan of the Starvin' Marvin episode of South Park also. You ever see that one, Brian? Starvin' Marvin?
I have, yes.
Yeah, a lot of people thought that was funny too. Anyway, if anybody had called me and said, oh, we've got to take it out, I said, okay, I wouldn't have realized. Thank you for bringing it up. I won't use it again. Sorry to cause you extra work. Up to and including, as I was thinking about it that morning, and here's one thing about, I do apologize when I feel bad about some things, and I've apologized to Dave Lagana, because when I started going over some of these things, and the fact that I'd mentioned it, when you start fucking apologizing for everything, because these people that don't even watch the show and just don't like me start whining about shit, then they know they've got you, and all these other things. You know this experience, Brian, when I'm talking about something to somebody that pisses me, that this thing is pissing me off, and I'm describing more of it, I tend to wind myself up. I've never done that at you. You and I have never had a cross word, but I have done it at you about others, right?
Certainly.
So I did apologize, because the more I started talking about this with Dave, I didn't go full on fuck you, but I did get very terse and quit and hung up on him. So I apologized since then for hanging up on him. But that was the thing, the degree of this thing. If their statement, if instead of taking the thing down and issuing the statement that it sounds like that I was in favor of sodomizing the nuns at the fucking convent or some just unspeakably horrible shit, to get everybody to jump on it even further and to call attention to it, if instead a statement had been put out, or he couldn't get me, so the next morning I would have chimed in on this, whatever the fuck. Hey, one of the announcers told an old joke that was probably in poor taste, and we missed it in editing, and we sure do apologize, and we won't do that again. I could pretty much be on board with that too. Especially since I'm not trying to bury him. Dave's the one that edited the show, and he's the one writing the apology. And he didn't include himself. He just didn't mention me by name, but I think everybody knew who he was talking about. And suddenly this was a shock to everybody that this line was in this program that multiple people have heard and nobody gave a shit about. So that was my issue there. Another of the issues was that, to be honest, this was rapidly, as I said to him, I think the quote was, not becoming not fun anymore for anybody. I'm sure they don't want to go through this shit. But the only reason I was doing this program, it was not as a career. It was because I like the NWA. I like old-fashioned wrestling. I wanted to help the program and have some fun. I was being compensated, but this is not going to affect my standard of living. It was about just doing something once in a while that was contributing to a program that's actually trying to do wrestling. So if it ain't fun for me, because I got to put up with every 2 weeks being asked to apologize for shit that I'm either not sorry for because I didn't say, or I'm not sorry for to the degree that people are goddamn wanting me fucking stuck up the ass with a goddamn fucking telephone pole and swung around downtown, I'm not that sorry, because it was a joke, and if you don't like the joke, that's fine, and I'd even apologize for a bad joke. But this goddamn feedback was above and beyond the offense, and I didn't mean it in any racist way. For fuck's sake. I think the people that took it instantly as racist think that must be the only thing on people's minds when they think of black people and chicken. Which that's a whole nother issue that you got. Because I'm going for Starvin' Marvin. You didn't like the fucking joke, did you?
No, I thought the joke at best is a outdated joke. That's maybe at best the best thing I could say about it. I don't like the joke. I think that obviously in 2019, but probably even further back than that, unless you're a heel manager trying to generate heat for your big bodyguard, it's probably best to avoid a joke equating I was about to say African Americans, in this case Africans, with fried chicken because of this reaction. But
it's a tasty food, though. I eat a bunch of it myself. But yes, I understand what you're saying. But here's the problem. Because I in no way was going in that thinking in that direction, it was a surprise to me and I also, because as I said, I've said it multiple times on multiple programs governed by the FCC. Nobody's ever said a goddamn. As a matter of fact, fans at the Fan Fest, especially in Charlotte, 20 years after the fact, have come up to me talking about Big Bubba and talking about that line and laughing. So it was on my mind. We did 4 hours of television off top of my head. And boy, after the thousands of hours of television that I've done, if you think I don't repeat some, well, you're fucking crazy. So I just said it. And they could have either trimmed it or they could have fucking apologized in a rational fashion for a bad joke. And I am not at all offended by the way that you just said, well, you know, if I goddamn got upset because everybody's, oh, that was a fucking rotten joke, Cornette, then I would be crazy. So I'm not offended in that way because you've said it like a reasonable person.
Well, if I could expand upon this for a moment, if you'll indulge me for a moment.
Please expand.
Let me first start by saying I've known you now for 25 years. I have not just known you through doing this podcast where it's two friends talking about wrestling, but I've known you outside of wrestling. We've had, social get-togethers when you've come to the city.
Social intercourse.
Well, let's not go crazy, but we've had occasions where you've come to the city and me and you and our significant others have gone out on the town, and it had nothing to do with wrestling. It was more about just us having fun. If I thought for a second that you were a racist a bigot, a homophobe, an anti-Semite, or anything else, I wouldn't be talking to you and I wouldn't be doing this show. And I'm pretty sensitive to these things. As anyone who's ever heard 605 could probably attest to, I'm, in a lot of ways, a militant Jew. And what I mean is, I'm very defensive about anti-Semitism. If I hear it, if I think it's there, I will go on the attack. I have hit people in the past if I thought I heard a comment that was anti-Semitic. And
well, and remember, I've asked you because it was such a non-issue with me growing up, and I don't remember my mother ever saying the word Jewish to differentiate somebody from whatever the point is. I've asked you on a couple of occasions, why are people mad at Jewish people again? Right?
Yeah.
Because I don't fucking get it.
No, we've had talks about this. Like I said, if I really thought you were any of these things that a lot of the people who are predisposed to not liking you say or think, I wouldn't be doing this. I'm a fucking liberal. You know, I'm an independent liberal. I'm the guy who would have a problem with this. But,
you know, and I've admitted, and we've covered it on the program here too, and you can go back and look at that if you want to, folks. That was months and months ago, if not last year or whatever. But I've had a problem in the past, as we know, with anger management. And in a few cases, when I've been in an actual fucking altercation with somebody, I've used some words that were not preferable, and I've apologized for those because I realize in the 25 or 30 years hence that it can't be applied just to one person. But my downfall has been in a lot of cases when I'm mad at somebody, and especially if it's a goddamn fight in the middle of fucking wrestling beef, I'm going to say some shit to make that person fucking mad. But I have apologized for those things because I really felt bad about it.
Right. And I think, you know, I'm not disagreeing with anything you're saying there, but I think if I can make 2 points based on this. One is, I could understand some sensitivity to this, because if you had made that same joke and it had been Jewish people instead of Ethiopians, and it had been whatever, you know, people want to say, money or something instead of fried chicken, I would have been offended. I would have had a problem with that.
But it wouldn't have made any, well, that wouldn't have really made any sense, would it?
But my point is,
but yes.
I think it's a bad joke. I think it's an ill-conceived line, especially in 2019. But I wasn't offended by it because I don't think you had any, I know you didn't have any malicious intent when making that comment. You were trying to make a joke, and it was pretty quick and it was glossed over. And by the way,
I've always liked it because when I first told it to fucking Bubba, he fucking died laughing, and he had that high-pitched giggle laugh for that big fucking hefty guy. And that's why I said it on TV the first time. And I've just had it. I don't know. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But, you know, my point was going to be, if someone makes an anti-Semitic remark, I don't need to hear Christians or Catholics or Muslims or atheists or anyone else telling me what is or isn't anti-Semitic. And I think the same thing goes for something like this. It wasn't racist. The intent wasn't racist. At best, it was a throwaway line. But I also don't need to hear a bunch of white boys telling me that this is racist. If you're an African American, or in this case, an African, and you want to tell me that it was offensive, that you thought it was racist, there's validity there. I want to hear what you have to say. I don't want to hear what some fucking white kid in their 20s thinks about this, because I don't give a shit. The same way I wouldn't give a shit if someone who wasn't Jewish told me what is or isn't anti-Semitic. And that bothers me. And like I said, I think it was a bad line. I think it was a bad joke. I think it should have been edited out, quite frankly. But your intent wasn't racist. It wasn't said in I mean, it wasn't, it blows my mind that people have run with this. But look, the other part of it is, you know, you have a target on your back. You have said a lot of shit about a lot of people, and those are typically the people that are the first ones that jump up and say, look, we got them. But I think this was entirely blown out of proportion. But again, it's,
well, and the proportion again is the thing with me. And as you said, if some of the criticism or whatever had been tempered in any way in fucking reality, like, you know, you really ought to apologize for that, because people are going to take that wrong. Not, oh my God, this no good, miserable piece of shit. I'm going to read a piece of mail in a minute that's kind of indicative of, and no, to you people, fuck you. Just fuck you, because I don't give a shit whether you like me or not. And if I apologized out the ass, if I carved off a pound of flesh and flung it out at everybody, you'd still find something else to bitch about next week because you don't like me. Because I tell the truth about your favorite wrestlers or your favorite politicians or whatever. So to those people, fuck you. To anybody that was legitimately, and then as you said, I've had so many people say, what the fuck? I was dying laughing. It was hysterical because some people actually liked it. They thought it was funny. But hey, you know, people have different senses of humor.
Right.
But if anybody that had actually taken the line of, you know what, Jim, that, you know, was probably funny a few years ago or whatever, but otherwise, you know, you might not do it today. Fine. Okay. I could even get with that. And I could apologize with that, but not with, we're going to fucking boil you in oil, you horrible human being. Do you know the guy that was popped by the feds and fined hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, and sanctioned legally for basically saying, I do not want black people to live in my buildings, is the president of the United States. And the fucking members of his administration are currently on national television all day testifying under oath on fucking global worldwide TV that he's a fucking crook. And an Ethiopian joke from 1986, I'm the worst human in the world, to those people, fuck you. If anybody came at me with tempered fucking rational criticism, such as you just did, this might have turned out a little bit better also as well. But instantly it put me off, as they say, the whole fucking thing. But whether it's overreacting to something that wasn't intended in that way, or whether it was goddamn retroactively fucking blaming me for everything when the thing passed through several sets of ears, for all the people that are just over fucking blown about this, that fuck you. For people who were mildly offended, I apologize because it wasn't meant that way. Of course, that's not good enough for anybody. And for once again, from what I've seen back and forth on Twitter, depending on the fucking hour of the day, some of my legitimate followers actually have jobs and lives and are not on all day long. But they're with, yeah, we love you, Corny. So anyway, the point with the NWA show is it wasn't fun for them either, because for some reason, I don't know what this reason might be, I overshadow everybody on every program I get on, whether for good or bad. If the good comments are, well, Cornette's the best in the world at what he does, which I am, and he's the best thing on the show, and the bad comments are, I will never watch this as long as Cornette. Of course, they're watching it to get mad, but I won't watch this if Cornette's involved. I hate him. I never want to see him. But that's the only thing people talk about. And they're trying to start a fucking promotion and a goddamn television show, and that's probably the last thing they want. I brought a lot, and I'm not asking people to not watch the NWA. The opposite. Part of the reason I don't want to be involved anymore is because it's not fun for me, because I'm distracting from what they're trying to do. And part of it is just that there's no reason to penalize all these guys that are working hard, because a bunch of people who don't watch the program and don't like that style of wrestling anyway, because it makes sense, don't like me because I take the piss out of their fucking cosplay wrestlers. So that's honestly and truthfully why, as I've mentioned over the last 3 or 4 years, I've tried to stay away from fucking actively being involved in the wrestling business, and people won't quit calling me. But, I find a good point. I try to pre-screen. I'd asked Cord Bauer at MLW, and that was only a part-time thing anyway, but I said, I won't be calling any invisible men, right? And, oh no, we're doing wrestling. But then I was calling staple guns. What the fuck? But I wasn't goddamn fucking screaming and yelling at every opportunity over it, because I was just there to do my thing for a little while. And I actually was told at one point, we're not going to be doing some of that stuff anymore with that guy. And then they did it anyway. Nevertheless, with the NWA, I was safe there because they're not going to make fun of the business. That's the antithesis of what they're doing. and do stupid shit like that. So that was fine with me, and I was glad to bring our listeners that like wrestling the old-fashioned way along with me. I encourage you, if you like the program, keep watching it, whether I'm on it or not. If you only watch because of me and you didn't like the rest of it, well, I'm not going to fucking torture you and ask you to make goddamn sacrifices, but I think it's a good show, and it'll get more fun as time goes along. But I cannot... But that's one of the reasons why I've tried to stay away from it, because the wrestling business, for one reason or another, has just been, whether inside or outside, has been just systematically stripped of any shred left of fun.
May I ask you a question?
Sure.
The statement that was issued by David Lagana says that you resigned.
Now, you said that name in a very goddamn...
It said that you resigned, made it sound like it was a formal process where you tendered this written resignation. Did you quit or were you fired?
No, but he didn't get a chance to fire me if he was going to, because that's basically when I said I got wound up and I was talking and he was listening, and I said, fuck it ain't fun anymore. You don't want this, I don't want this, and I'm fucking sick of it. I'm fucking done, and I hung up on him. But once again, it doesn't matter. So the cosplay wrestling fan warriors can be happy that I'm no longer on the NWA. And I'm sorry that it's not costing me any more money. And I guess I'll find some way to fill those 2 days every 2 months. But but it's not fun for anybody. The people who think that wrestling ought to be silly and fun, the only company and person trying to do it in a serious way, and, that ain't good enough for them. So anyway, and have fun doing it. But no, I'm not going on a crusade against the NWA. I don't want to be grouped in any more of these fucking apologies. That's, as I said, that's why I've been doing my own thing. So I either apologize when I'm genuinely sorry for something, like I have, and we've referred to, and etc., or I don't give a fuck, which is the majority of the time, but I don't want to hurt someone that I'm working with because I don't give a fuck. And none of these people are paying me enough money to not give a fuck, or to give a fuck, or whichever the fucking tense on that would be.
Well, the reason I asked you is just because I've seen various things that the listeners, or just people who aren't listeners who just want to comment on this, are saying, where the NWA was right to get rid of him, and then other people say Jim was right to quit. So I just wanted you to clarify exactly what happened.
Well, that was the exchange. Now, I don't know whether it would have gotten around to that or not, but David was at first beating around the bush about statements and apologies and things. So, and I didn't like that tenor to begin with, and that's where it kind of got sideways from there.